99.7 WTN. We're here for 3 hours. Are they Buddhists? Whichever comes first. I'm glad to be with you. It is episode 313, Wednesday, April 5, 2023. And I hope that you listen as much as you can because we've lots to discuss. Man, it's almost too much information to go through in the course of a mere 3 hours. But we have 4 more hours after me of the Drive with Brian Wilson. And as a matter of fact, all day long, live and local conversation, information-fueled and opinion-driven on Supertalk 99.7 WTN. When I tell you that I'm an open book in terms of where this conversation goes, it's not quite true, inasmuch as I do have Jody Barrett, State Representative Jody Barrett's coming on at 12:35 to talk about some of the shenanigans going on in the Tennessee General Assembly and whether or not he's willing to vote to expel 3 Democrats that attempted to take over the body several days ago. That's at 12:30. At 1:05, a special edition of Jay Sinclair. Normally, Jay's on Friday, but for 2 reasons, we're pulling him in today. One, I am moving. Tomorrow and Friday, I will be in for Brian Wilson. Brian Wilson taking a couple of days of much-deserved vacation, relaxation. I don't know if it's a vacation, technically, but he's off. So I'll be in for Brian. I do not know who's in for me from noon until 3 as of yet. I think maybe Pamela.
Johnny B.
Oh, is Johnny B coming in?
Yeah, Johnny B's going to do Thursday and Friday.
Johnny B's coming in?
Yeah.
Johnny B's doing my show?
Yes.
Holy no! See, I disagree with that. I'm gonna tell you why. I mean, no, I don't like that because people are gonna like Johnny B more than me, and I don't care for that. I mean, I've already got to deal with the Pamela Fur deal, and now I got to deal with this.
That's a given. You're just gonna have to handle it.
Well, I love that Johnny B's doing the show. So thank you, Johnny B, for that. And I'll have to thank him in person when I see him next time. So, yeah, there's that. So that's one reason to have Jay Sinclair in today as opposed to Friday. Number 2 is the obvious reason, and that is we need Jay to break down the indictment that was and the information that wasn't within the indictment. More on that coming up when we speak to Jay. And actually, I'll delve into that here in just a moment. And then in the 2 o'clock hour, our normal conversation with a good friend, Cameron Smith of the Tennessean, AL.com. And Cameron is a voice known to all of you. He fills in with a fair amount of regularity, and he's a good guy. Cameron's my establishment conservative friend, and I say that in love. I'm more of the out there on a ledge kind of libertarian guy. Cameron kind of brings me back to the ways of Washington, D.C., and that is much to your delight and chagrin, depending on the perspective and the conversation at hand. And we'll have much to talk about with Cameron today at 2:05. But other than that, if you're watching on the TV there, and we're on Supertalk TV every day that we do this show, at least most days, unless there's some technical snafu, on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. And I'm old school, so I write out my topic selections every day. I have a notepad, and each day you'll see me jotting things on the pad. I remember things by writing them down. That is my mental association. That helps galvanize things and imprint it in my brain. So that's one of the reasons I have a notepad. But also, I do better by writing things out on the notepad in terms of topic points. And normally I'll have a full page, if not 2 pages of, and this is not, writing out or scripting the show because obviously we don't do that. Otherwise, I do a better job at it. But, number 1, Trump indictment and a couple of points I want to make. Number 2, General Assembly and a couple of points I want to make. And today, you'll notice, look, there's nothing. I am open for conversation. Mainly because I had a really, really busy morning meeting with a couple of clients and managing a couple of interviews about the General Assembly. I've been interviewed by 2 different radio stations. Well, I guess if we include Matt Bassett, 3 different radio stations today about what's going on in the General Assembly. Not because I have anything special, because people want to know what the heck's going on because you're not getting real news. Imagine for a moment, if you have friends who live in Ohio or Montana or California, God forbid, or anywhere else in the United States, do this at some point today or whenever you get a chance. If your friends pay attention at all to the news, and it helps if they are left of center just a little and they don't regularly watch Fox News. But if they're a consumer of hashtag never CNN, don't watch this garbage. It is garbage. I'll watch it so you don't have to. It is an occupational hazard for me. You should not put yourself or your family through that. Do not watch this nonsense. That said, whether it's hashtag never CNN or MSNBC or any of the other alphabet soups, like I think ABC, CBS, NBC, all of those, call them up and ask them if they've heard about what's going on in the General Assembly. And then ask them what they know about it. Because the mainstream media is just, they do this with a fair amount of regularity. They position issues through their narrative lens in such a way where they mangle the details of the issue to their ultimate goals. Here's what I mean. In the General Assembly in the state of Tennessee, you had 3 elected lawmakers who are not above the law. Remember what the quote-unquote so-called January 6th insurrection was all about? It was about people not being above the law. And the Constitution and the rule of law being sacrosanct, even when it comes to partisan political debate and contentious political issues, like the suggestion that the 2020 election was stolen from Donald Trump in the favor of Joe Biden, which many of us believed that it was. It was about the rule of law, right? Well, the state of Tennessee has rules too. And you had 3 sitting lawmakers, Gloria Johnson, Justin Jones, and Justin Pearson, one of whom has apologized. Did you see that Pearson had the intelligence to say he was sorry? Oh, I've got that. He has written a letter of apology to the General Assembly. And it was actually, I don't know if it was heartfelt or not, but it was written properly. I acknowledge what I did was wrong. I'm sorry. I won't do it again.
So we have one that's admitted they broke the rules, and now I have one that's admitted and apologized for breaking the rules.
Yes, Gloria Johnson obviously said, well, we broke a rule, but it's not a big deal. You need to get over yourself. Justin Jones, I don't think has said anything along these lines. So we know, because you're listening to Super Talk 99.7 WTN, and it's right in our backyard, what really happened. You had rallies against guns. These were gun control rallies designed to gin up support for some sort of gun control legislation. I'm not really sure what they're asking for, because the things that they stated they wanted at the Legislative Plaza on the day that I was there, listening to them, talking to them 2 days ago, I was there. And they said that we want to ban assault weapons. Well, the Tennessee General Assembly can't ban assault weapons. They don't have that authority. What else do you want? Well, justice, or whatever it might be. Glomming onto this, these 3 individuals, while the House was in session, took over the well and encouraged the gallery to take over the session. And so Cameron Sexton, correctly, the Speaker of the House, who will be on with me Friday, he correctly points out that this is the definition of an insurrection. And instead of the 3 individuals that were attempting to rouse up the passions of the gallery and have them take over the body, instead of those people being the bad guys, suddenly Cameron Sexton's the bad guy for calling it an insurrection. Now, work with me here. Follow me for a moment. Walk with me, you Murphy minions. The same group of people that have been misidentifying the events of January 6th for the last 3 years as an insurrection now somehow take exception with Cameron Sexton correctly identifying an insurrection when one just happened right in front of him. And I'm supposed to take those people seriously. Well, it's one thing that we know the truth. It is one thing that we understand what really went on. It's another thing if you don't live here. And I believe that the mainstream media is currently engaging in the same type of misinformation campaign about this that they did about drag shows, which created the atmosphere to begin with that potentially could have led to the Covenant School shooting. We don't know because we haven't seen the manifesto. The same nonsense misinformation that's coming out of the MSNBCs and the CNNs of the world right now is the same style of misinformation that was coming out of the same organizations prior to the Covenant School shooting regarding drag shows. The state of Tennessee has banned drag shows. More in a moment. The state of Tennessee has denied medical service to transgender minors. More in a moment. It was garbage. And they knew it was garbage. Yet they said it anyway. And is it possible that their words and their mischaracterization and their misinformation is it possible it led to Covenant School? Maybe. What about now? I'm prognosticating this, folks. I don't want it to happen, but I'm telling you, we just saw what happens, at least potentially, because we haven't seen the manifesto, when lies and misinformation and mischaracterization of what's going on in a state can potentially lead to danger and violence and death. Now, the same media organizations are saying that 2 black lawmakers are being railroaded in the Old South. That's what they're saying. 2 duly elected black lawmakers are being expelled for nothing. They're booting them out because they don't like their guy. The underlying insinuation of the garbage that I've seen on these networks over the last 36 hours has been just that. Now, Gloria Johnson aside, they focus on the color of the skin of the 2 individuals that fomented the insurrection in the floor of the body, and they decide that this is all racial. And they don't say it, they insinuate it. I don't know what you do with Justin Pearson. I guess because he has apologized and he sent a formal letter of apology. And you know what? You have to determine whether his contrition is real or not, I suppose. But let's say for a moment, by the way, the actions of these 3 most certainly merit at least a vote of expulsion. And it's up to the body what they do after that. Well, let me ask you this. What happens when they get expelled? Let's say all 3 of them are expelled. Already we've heard from Jones, who says this is all, the insinuation, young black man. He compared himself to Jesus Christ. He did. Turning over the money tables in the temple. Anytime you compare someone to Jesus or Hitler, you're probably losing. But he did. Understanding how the media is misinforming the public, understanding how they're mischaracterizing what truly happened on the floor of the General Assembly, understanding that they're not going into the nature of the rule breaking that occurred, understanding that the editorial page at the Tennessean, for those who can or do read it, understanding that they've already mischaracterized it as this is not leadership. And understanding the underlying insinuation of racism. What happens in Memphis if Justin Pearson gets the boot? What happens in Nashville if Justin Jones gets the boot? I don't want it. I don't predict it. But I have eyeballs. I have a brain. You are dealing with a portion of population, not just in this case, but in many cases, that they don't want to sit down and talk to you about your position on the issues and their position on the issues and where can we find compromise and where are we simply going to disagree. They have no interest in it. They want to yell at you until you go away and they get their way. And some of them just want to burn crap to the ground. Expulsion is the right answer for these three in the General Assembly. What happens then in Knoxville or in Nashville or in Memphis? Well, it's easy to say that you just round them up and lock them up, but sadly, I don't know that that's the case either. Not a prediction, just an observation to begin the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We'll continue the conversation with Jody Barrett in just a couple of minutes. He'll be up in studio with us. It's 12:19, just getting underway, almost 12:20. By the way, Super Talk line is always available, either the phone line or the text line, 615-737-9986, 737-WWTN. It's the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk. Hey, friends, it's Matt Murphy for Efficient Heating and Cooling. Jeff Eddy and Efficient Heating and Cooling can assist you in all of your heating and cooling needs. I promise you this, if you've got an AC that's not running properly and you've already cranked that bad boy up, it is time to get with Jeff Eddy and Efficient Heating and Cooling and allow him to assist you in those needs. It's maintenance season, right? And it doesn't have to cost you an arm and a leg to maintenance that AC unit, to make sure that it's running as it should, to make sure there aren't any problems that are going to become apparent when it's working a little harder in the summertime months. So make the call that so many others have made and schedule that maintenance appointment today with Jeff Eddy at Efficient Heating and Cooling. Let me tell you this. Jeff is never going to upsell you if you don't need the work. And when he tells you what the deal is, he's going to explain it to you in a way where it's easy to understand and you have options. And if it's time to replace, obviously they're ready to do that. A diamond contractor with Mitsubishi Electric, an Elite Pro partner with Rheem. Call today at 615-784-4424, 784-4424, or efficienthvac.net. That's efficienthvac.net. All right, Super Talk 99.7 WT, and a number of you already calling in, and I appreciate that. Wednesday edition of the Murphy Show continues. It is April 5. Super text lines up and running as well. Discussing in the first portion of the day, and look, I know that we will we'll get to the indictment of Donald Trump. I go back and forth. I was mentioning this on several of the shows that I was on this morning, that I have a hard time taking any of this seriously, the indictment of Donald Trump, because I read the indictment and it is nonsense. If anything, and I don't believe that this is the case either, if anything, what this prosecutor has, you have a few instances of a misdemeanor crime in the state of New York involving misidentifying a business expense. Now, I would argue that if you engage in a non-disclosure agreement with someone about anything, and yes, in this case, you're talking about, more salacious activity like a clandestine affair with a porn actress, but if you engage in a non-disclosure agreement with anyone about anything, then you're violating, the spirit of the non-disclosure agreement if you have to disclose everything about the non-disclosure agreement in publicly available forms. It doesn't make any sense. So it's perfectly legal for me to enter into a contract with, for example, Jody Barrett's about to come in. He's in studio with us today. So if Jody and I enter into a non-disclosure about whatever, about my golf game and how bad it is, don't tell anybody. And it's bad. And we might do that if we play golf. So, and I say, Jody, you can't tell anybody how bad my golf game is. So sign this documentation. I'm going to pay you $1,000 to not say a word about how awful my golf game is. And then I have to turn to the business ledger and write down $1,000 payment to Jody Barrett so as to not disclose how bad my golf game is. That's a publicly available document. So the media goes to the document and we disclose how bad my golf game is as a result. It's literally the misdemeanor that Donald Trump's being charged with. Now, that's a misdemeanor. That's a finable offense. The statute of limitations is also run out on that. But that's not what we're doing with the indictment. We're charging Donald Trump with a felony. And yesterday, Alvin Bragg, who I heard Matt Bassett earlier refer to him as Fat Alvin, which is pretty clever. Alvin Bragg said, oh, no, these are felonies. It's 34 felony counts, and it is because it had to do with the commission of a secondary offense, a secondary crime. Well, what was that secondary crime? He wouldn't say. Well, what do you mean you're not going to say? You just released the indictment. You have charged Donald Trump with a felonious act, and you're not going to tell him what that act is? Now, the suggestion has been that it was a federal charge. Alvin Bragg has no authority to bring federal charges against Donald Trump. None. And the federal agencies that do have already decided not to. You see how ludicrous all of this is? So I have a hard time taking it seriously, but the serious side of me understands this. That once the Democrats begin opening pages of this playbook along these lines, they're not going to stop. They have decided, much in the same way that banana republics I'm not trying to make too much of this. This is the way dictatorships begin, by destroying your political enemies through a corrupt justice system. If you can begin jailing people that think differently than you about political matters, then eventually the only people around you are people that feel the same about political matters, and you don't really have any political opposition anymore. You see how that works? And that's called authoritarianism. For so long we've been saying this. Those Democrats that accuse Republicans of this, that, and the other, I promise you, they're engaged in this, that, and the other. Just as the Democrats accused Donald Trump of Russian collusion, they were engaged in Russian collusion. Hillary Clinton's campaign. Just as they accused Donald Trump of nefarious activity, including spying and whatnot, they were doing the spying. They were utilizing the FBI. Over and over and over again, we find that which they accuse, they engage in. It's shameful. Well, they don't have any shame, so can't really be shameful. I want to go to Drew real quick in Hendersonville. We're about to go to Jody Barrett to talk about some of these legislative matters in the General Assembly. Drew, what do you got?
Are you there?
Hey, Drew, I'm here. How about you?
Hey. I'm sorry. I'm a little slow on the take.
That's all good.
What if I'm going to take your golf game analogy a little bit further, okay?
All right.
What if this buddy of yours never actually played golf with you, but he said he did and said you were the worst stinking player he had ever seen in his life, and he was going to ruin your career because he was saying he played with you and you were the worst, and then you paid him to shut up, because I think that's more like what happened with the Trump case.
Yeah, I mean, I get where you're going there, and I understand that even Michael Cohen went back and forth about whether the payment was actually made, and there is a strong denial on the part of Donald Trump that any of this ever happened. And ultimately, whether it happened or not, Stormy Daniels had to pay back the $130,000 because she violated the non-disclosure agreement and had to pay Donald Trump's legal fees.
Right. And there should have been a higher penalty, in my opinion, if more than just paying back what you were paid. In my opinion, I mean, they should have made it a more expensive payback.
Well, Stormy Daniels should have faced justice. Michael Avenatti should have faced justice because what they did amounted to extortion.
Well, of course, we know she didn't pay it herself anyway. So
there you go. Drew, thank you for the call. It is 12:30. Jody Barrett sits before me, and we will speak to the sitting representative out of Dixon coming up in just a moment on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. All right, friends. So Matt Murphy for the Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief. I've told this story often, and I'm going to give it to you one more time because it's important. I'm not just someone that talks about the Dr. Gill Center. I'm a client of the Dr. Gill Center. I've had back issues for a long, long time. You know, in my 20s, I didn't really know what lifting with your back meant. Well, my back is explaining it to me now. And I have that lower back pain that causes me discomfort. But that discomfort has been lessened. And frankly, I get through every day now without the need for taking medication. Thank you to the Dr. Gill Center. When I first went and met with Dr. Wendy, I went through a complete examination. She gave me x-rays. We went over those x-rays. And she identified things that I had no idea were going on, like an upper neck compression that we have now solved. We went through decompression therapy at the Dr. Gill Center, and now I don't have radiating pain out to my shoulders that I had. I thought it was musculature, but it was not. It was spinal in nature, and we have corrected that issue. Thank you to the Dr. Gill Center. If you're experiencing pain in any of your joints, I want you to go to the Dr. Gill Center. They can help. Don't take a pill. Call Dr. Gill. The telephone number is 615-882-4838, 882-4838 for the Dr. Gill Center. It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Matt Murphy and you until 3 o'clock. Thank you for being with us. Oh, well, no, guests don't have to do all of that, Jody. We'll do that for you. Man, Jody's, he must have done this before. He was reaching for the on-air button to get going.
Representative trying to Jody put me Barrett. Out of a job, dude?
You know,
what's that about?
Jody Barrett was the first campaign he was the first individual in the state of Tennessee that I went to a campaign event for. Four, because you have some pretty good people in your corner that were endorsing your candidacy out in Dixon, and I was invited to a campaign event. Loved getting to meet you. And I love watching and talking to you as much as I possibly can on background about your experience. This has been quite an opening session for you. Jody Barrett joins us in studio. What's going on, man?
Oh, not a whole lot. It's just been another regular boring day in the state legislature.
Is this? I guess this is what you asked for. Be careful what you ask for. You might get it.
Right. I don't know. I said before, I didn't think that the first thing I would do as a first vote I would have as a state legislator would be something having to do with transgender surgeries. I certainly didn't think I was going to have to be a participant in some vote to expel one of my fellow members as part of my first year up here. So it's been different for sure.
What is and I know we have these particular issues to talk about, but curiosity gets the best of me. I've spoken to individuals that go to D.C. in Congress, and there's kind of an orientation for them where, leadership within your caucus or whatnot, they kind of take you under their wing and they help you kind of, know where the offices are, know where the bathrooms are, know how things are done. Is that the case for freshmen who entered the General Assembly? Do you have something of an orientation?
Sure. There's actually multiple ways that you get kind of brought into the spectrum and taught the ways of the General Assembly. First of all of the freshmen, including Democrats and Republicans alike, went to Knoxville in December for a leadership conference that was put on by the University of Tennessee, where we kind of got the nuts and bolts of here's how to be a legislator. You just won an election. Now here's what you have to look forward to and what you're going to have to do. How do you get a bill filed? How do you get a bill passed? The whole 9 yards.
So what you're telling me, Jody, is that you were well aware that at least in order to get recognized by the Speaker of the House, that it was going to be necessary to have a coat and tie on.
It's in black and white in our House rules.
I mean, that's kind of where we start. And, one of the three individuals in question, and we'll talk about the specifics of that in a moment, Justin Pearson, decided that he was going to kind of press that issue a little bit. And the Speaker tried to politely explain to him, I think, that, that's the way that these things go. And that kind of set him up for failure, frankly, in the House of Representatives. But I just wanted, so you guys are well aware of the way the body works and the order in which it works. And, I won't say it's Robert's Rules of Order, but obviously there's just a way the House of Representatives works, and the rules are clearly defined to individuals, even incoming freshmen.
Correct. And both caucuses have leadership that meets with their freshmen to give them instruction on how that they're supposed to behave, how they're supposed to dress, all of that. And I have a 3-ring binder that has about 25, 30 pages of the official House rules that I read through. So as an attorney, I'm accustomed to local rules of court that I have to read up on every different county that I go to. Mm-hmm. This is no different. There's a local rule that says, hey, here's how this works. Here's who's in charge. Here's what you have to do to be recognized, to be able to speak, the whole 9 yards.
So when certain media outlets who seem to be attempting to shift the narrative want to focus, it was just what Johnson and the two Justins, as I call them, what they did a couple of days ago wasn't that big of a deal. It was just a minor rule infraction. I looked at it, and I thought it was a major deal. And I think that's evidenced by the fact that they knew they would be cut off fairly quickly. They knew the rules of the floor, and they brought a bullhorn with them in an order to, what I feel like, was to encourage the gallery to take over an active session of the House of Representatives. Did you see it that way?
Absolutely. There's two things on that. One, this has never happened in 225 years of the existence of this state. This has never happened on the House floor. So that's evidence number one of how big a deal this is. Number two, these folks themselves knew it was a big deal because the first question they asked of their leadership when they got pulled off the floor, literally drug off the floor by their leadership, the first question they asked was, are we going to be arrested? You don't ask that question unless you know what you are doing is a breach, a serious breach of the rules.
I've spoken to the speaker, Cameron Sexton, and we'll talk to him again on air at length. And it's my understanding he believed and others believed that was what they wanted to happen.
That was discussed the morning that it was happening as to whether or not, how and when do we need to address this? Do we even continue on with session that morning? That was discussed. And so certainly that was weighed in is hey, do we take them out of here, or is that exactly what they want with all of their crowd and media and cameras and everything? So, hey, hindsight being 2020, now we've just given them time to kind of prepare for it anyway. So, but we are doing what the law provides, and that is we are giving them due process. They've been told what they've been charged with. They're going to have an opportunity to contest those charges, and then the body will decide. This is not Cameron Sexton's decision. This is the body's decision, and we have to have a 2/3 vote. And if 2/3 of the members agree that expulsion is correct or the proper response, then that's what will happen. If not, then we'll fall back on something else.
Have you sought out counsel for those that have been in the House longer than you, or is it kind of clear to you where your mind is on this?
We've all talked. And I do have mentors. In fact, it's interesting. You mentioned Representative Pearson's first day, and the person that he ran into on that first day that he was there to be sworn in, that met him on the floor to advise him, hey, young man, this is the House floor. We have rules, and you need to have a coat and tie on, was my mentor, my legislative mentor, Representative David Hawk, who is the longest tenured Republican in the House right now.
Mm-hmm.
Representative Pearson's first act after being sworn in was to go to Twitter to accuse Representative Hawk of being a white supremacist who was trying to keep him from coming onto the House floor.
And for those that don't know the backstory here, Justin Pearson was elected in a special election out in Memphis. I don't know the district number. And he is obviously aware of the rules of the House. Instead of abiding by the rules of that. And look, we're not arguing whether those rules should be. They are. If you want to argue that they should be loosened or they should be different or it's a different time, you shouldn't have an expectation. That's one argument to make, but that's not what he did.
No, and look, the rules are agreed upon by the majority, by the leadership of both houses, of both parties. So there is a rules committee that is made up of Republican leadership, Democrat leadership, Speaker, other folks. They decide what the House rules are and vote on that, and that's put in place at the beginning of every session. So everybody knows what the rules of the House are.
And just so to clarify for those that are new or perhaps you weren't aware of the story, so Pearson goes to the floor in a traditional, and there's a word for it, and I've forgotten what it is, but it's a traditional African piece of clothing.
Dashiki.
Dashiki, thank you. And there was an insinuation. I read an insinuation that there was some form of religious connotation. I've seen no evidence that that's the case. But he finally came around to that issue. He came around on that issue, and he finally understood that, if you want to be recognized and have influence for your constituents, that you have to abide by the rules that everybody agrees to.
And look, as a redneck from Dixon County, I understand not.
You want to wear your blue jeans and your T-shirt, don't you?
Well, I understand not liking being told what to do or how to do it. But when you come into a official position like this, you have to treat it with the respect that it deserves, and that is you have to dress accordingly.
I've met Jody a couple of times. The first thing I said to you, because y'all are going into session today, right?
Yes.
So first thing I said to Jody is, man, you dress up nice. You got a suit on.
That's right.
You know?
So committee meetings all day today. So got to be pretty for the camera, as they say.
So I mean that gets us to, and I want to turn the corner and talk about some issues that actually affect Tennesseans, and I think this one will, because I'm fearful of what some in the media and some of these representatives are trying to turn this into. I mean, it's a clear violation of the rules. I can't tell you where Pearson's heart is. I can't. And there are many in our listening audience that say, look, actions have consequences. But at this point, he seems to be doing the right thing, right? He has written a formal apology. He said, look, I did wrong.
It was an apology with a, hey, I'm sorry, but here's why I did this. So it's not completely relieving him or absolving him of any responsibility. At least he and Representative Johnson have acknowledged that they broke the rules. Representative Jones has yet to acknowledge that he's done anything wrong.
Are these, when the vote happens tomorrow, because that's when the vote on expulsion will happen, correct?
Correct.
Will it be 3 separate votes for each?
It is 3 separate resolutions, so each resolution will have to be presented. There'll be discussion on the resolution, and then there will be a vote.
Any predictions?
At this point, it's too early to tell. I think it is an evolving situation. A lot of the general public and folks that are maybe only listening to one side of this or the other think, well, this decision's already made. Folks actually thought it happened Monday night, and it didn't. That was just the resolution to being presented that this was a possibility. But there's discussion that's taking place hourly, as from Monday night all the way through to this moment. And as we sit here now, I'm not in a meeting that's taking place where there's being discussion about, hey, what is the right thing to do? What path do we need to take? Both caucuses have met as a group. And so I don't know. I can't answer that right now. I can't speak for 74 other Republicans to tell you how I think that they're going to vote.
Look, and I'll tell you, and I think I've made this clear to the listening audience, this is not something that any of you, and I understand the audience, I mean, decidedly is in favor of expulsion. You violate the rules, and those actions must have consequences. And I'm not trying to admonish the audience here, but look, elections matter too. And I appreciate the fact that you and leadership, you're taking it very seriously, that, you know, there are people that might think very differently than your constituents think about how to solve issues that elected these individuals to their positions. So it should not be taken lightly that the House of Representatives makes the decision that their actions on the floor rise to the level of expulsion. At the same time, you know, if not that, then what, right? I mean, is there a level of punishment, first word that comes to mind, that doesn't rise to the level of expulsion? Because, look, I'll give you an example. During the congressional primary, the Tennessee Republicans decided to not allow certain Republicans on the ballot to run in the primary. I didn't like it because I think all of this should ultimately be decided by the people, and ultimately the people make the decisions about who represents them. So, I mean, I just appreciate that y'all are taking it seriously, and I know that you'll get blowback if the decision is not to expel. You'll get a certain blowback if you do decide to expel. I mean, that has to be weighed within the consideration process.
Certainly, and I think one of the hardest parts of the job is making decisions based on the facts versus based on the outcome or based on, you know, the results or consequences that come from that. You have to do what's right no matter what the blowback's going to be. And the one thing I do want to make sure is perfectly clear that any decision that's made on this, certainly for me personally, but I think I can speak for my colleagues in this regard, it has nothing to do, it will have nothing to do with where they stand politically on the issues. It is simply based on the actions that they took and the violations of the rules.
And I'm not saying this about you, but I would say this broadly, and I don't know if any Republican in the body would say it this way, but I don't think anybody really cares. Well, let me put it this way. The Democrats can feel or believe whatever they want to feel and believe, and if the Republican Party believes, based on the people that have elected them, that a certain thing is the right thing to do, the Democrats aren't going to stand in their way. There's nothing the Democrats can do to prevent legislation from being passed that the Republicans feel like is the right thing because the people have elected enough like-minded people. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it really doesn't, at that stage, have anything to do with politics. It's not like you need to get Pearson out of the body in order to pass legislation. You can pass anything you want without.
Hey, Matt. Hoglet has just tweeted about an hour ago that Reverend Stephen Green has started a sit-in in Speaker Sexton's office to try to stop the vote on the expulsion.
Wait, who?
Hoglet. David Hogg. I call him Hoglet.
Oh. So who's doing the sit-in?
Reverend Stephen Green and other faith leaders have just started a sit-in at the Tennessee State Capitol.
Look what you're missing out on.
I know, right? But I'm here with you, so it's okay. I'm probably glad to be here, actually.
I thought you were talking about Gloria Johnson.
No, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have assumed.
I don't want to go any further. I don't want to get accused of anything. But when you said Hoglet, that's what I thought you were talking about. Let's take a break, and we'll come back. We'll talk about some other issues that hopefully we'll see come to fruition in the state legislature as we have a few more minutes with Jody Barrett, representative from Dixon, on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Just enough time to say thank you to Jody Barrett, representative from Mount Dixon Way, for stopping by and offering his thoughts on everything that's been going on this week. It has not been dull, Jody.
Never dull. Always a new day to find something exciting and new and have a new experience.
We'll be watching today and certainly tomorrow as some of this comes to its conclusion, and we'll continue the discussion next time. Thank you for being on with us.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Representative Jody Barrett, everybody. We'll be back with Jay Sinclair to break down the Trump indictment. That is up next on Matt Murphy on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
From ABC News, I'm Derek Dennis. Multiple deaths today in an outbreak of severe weather in the Midwest. At least 5 killed south of St. Louis in storms stretching from Texas to Michigan and points east.
The tornado watches from southern Illinois, the boot of Missouri, back into much of Arkansas. Now that's going to keep moving east. We're going to have a really active late morning, early afternoon through the Great Lakes. So Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, western Kentucky, and Tennessee, you're in that elevated risk. Even western Pennsylvania and New York late tonight after record highs going to erupt into storms.
ABC's chief meteorologist Ginger Z. More talk of a gag order today over former President Trump after his speech and rally last night in Florida. Trump reacting to his arraignment on felony charges of falsifying business records. ABC's Rachel Scott reports Trump's 2024 campaign will have to walk a thin line.
The lines have officially blurred in this. So we will hear the former president out on the campaign trail. He will be going after the Manhattan district attorney as part of his 2024 campaign. And then he'll try to turn the tables and say, this is not just about me. He will also say that this is about all of his supporters as well. This is what he is going to be campaigning on ahead of 2024.
DA Alvin Bragg saying not even a former president is above the law. The Justice Department reaching a tentative $144 million settlement over a deadly 2017 mass shooting at a church in Sutherland Springs, Texas. 25 people and an unborn child killed. The payout is over the shooter's assault conviction in the Air Force that should have kept him from owning a gun. Today, the family of a black teen killed in a police shooting in Washington, D.C. is demanding action.
I need the officer arrested immediately for murder. First-degree murder.
That's the mother of Delaney Martin, Terry Martin, on the release of police body cam video showing a park police officer getting into the backseat of Martin's car while he was asleep. Martin shot in the back when he woke up. You're listening to ABC News.
I love these things. The Nashville Home Show is in town. These things. That would be the Nashville Home Show, Thursday, April 6th. That's tomorrow through Saturday, April 8th. It's at the Music City Center, a place that I went for the first time just the other day. An impressive facility and an impressive show. 3 days only for great deals, incredible ideas, and practical advice from trusted local experts. You can get eye-opening tips. You can get tricks of the trade from HGTV and the laundry guy, Patrick Richardson. He'll be there. Plus, you can see the Rock Place, Bellegarde Outdoor Living Showroom for backyard inspiration. It's the Nashville Home Show. Everything having to do with your home and spring will be at the Nashville Home Show, from kitchens to bathrooms, outdoor landscapes to, barbecues. It's all going to be out there, plus swag. I cannot impress upon you enough the level of swag that you get at the Nashville Home Show. You'll see it yourself. Thursday, April 6th through Saturday, April 8th. Get tickets by going to NashvilleSpringHomeshow.com. That's NashvilleSpringHomeshow.com. It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Hour number 2 starts right now. Thank you for being with us. 106. You can see if you're watching on Super Talk TV. I don't know if Bell has the double shot up there. But if you're watching on Super Talk TV, you see that we have an interloper. But that's okay.
Oh, no, actually, I have a picture of Jay Sinclair up there.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. Well, we do have an interloper in studio, and I'll allow the interloper to question our barrister, our counselor who's on the line. I guess technically you're one, too.
I am for real an attorney. Leave me alone.
Cameron Smith is in studio with us. He came in early, and we love having him. He's got his nice Hawaiian shirt on, and you'll see that next hour once, or maybe in 30 minutes, once we have completed our conversation with our good friend, who will be introduced momentarily. After I tell you that you're invited to be a part of the proceedings, 615-737-9986 is the number. That is the super text line as well as the telephone line. I can't promise you that I'll get phone calls anytime in the immediate future, but we'll get to them a little bit later on, okay? Because we've lots to discuss. So we broke down what went down in the General Assembly earlier this week. The vote to possibly expel 3 members for the remainder of the session will be held tomorrow. It's my understanding at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Here's where I believe the body is at on this, just to put this to bed before we move on to other things. I think there was a fair amount of unanimity Monday to boot all 3 of them out. I think that there is absolute I think the rules are on the side of expulsion, that you had 3 members standing in the well of the body, actively encouraging the shutdown of the active session that was going on. At the same time, I believe that if you get an apology from the well tomorrow, and I'm not saying this is what I want to happen, it's saying what I think will happen, that if you get an apology, and you know what, I'm not going to believe that any sincerity exists in Democrats, okay, until proven otherwise. Gloria Johnson is an insincere human being. Justin Jones is an insincere human being. I don't know about this Justin Pearson. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, okay, just to say that I did split the baby a little bit. But I think if you get apologies out of them, they'll remove their certain privileges for the rest of the session, but they will not expel them. That's my prediction.
You mean like keep them off committees?
Keep them off committees for the rest of the session. Maybe not give them their parking spots. You know, they removed their code keys. Their card keys didn't work.
So they couldn't even get in their own office?
To get their scooters. So I'm sorry that I'm laughing, but I'm laughing when the representative explains to the general public and actually to the media that she's friendly with how egregious of an action this was. Her example was, I couldn't get into my office to get my scooter, my personal mobility scooter. By the way, Gloria Johnson's not old. This is not an age thing. It's a different thing. Be that as it may, that's my prediction. We'll find out Cameron Smith's prediction coming up in just a couple of minutes. Cameron's here. And look who else is here. It's a special edition of Friday.
Good morning, Americans. It's Friday.
It's not morning. It's not Friday. And we don't care. Because we got Trump indictments. We got all kind of nonsense to talk about with our good friend Jay Sinclair. He is a Tennessee man. He's a Tennessee graduate, and he now lives in Birmingham, Alabama, and he's the best lawyer that I know. And I'm sitting in front of two of them. My back. Cameron, hold on. Turn your microphone on, Cameron. But Jay, how are you?
Man, if I was any better, I'd be your little dog, Mrs. Beasley.
Well, she's got it good, Jay. She's got it good. You would have it pretty good if you were Mrs. Beasley.
Oh, yeah, life would be good then.
Well, Jay, I have to clean something up with Cameron for just a moment. Cameron, I love you.
Love you too.
But of the two lawyers that I'm currently talking to, only one has won a case at the United States Supreme Court.
Yeah, and it's not me.
And it ain't you.
Matt, why don't you just call his kids ugly?
I've seen Cameron's kids. They're beautiful children.
Yeah.
And I bet, but here's what I bet, Cameron. I bet if you gave your son a can of white paint and told him to paint the poles in your garage, that he would paint them all the way to the ceiling. There's one human being that understands that joke, Jay. Just one.
Well, Jay is a real attorney. I'm a recovering one. There's a difference.
Ah, I like the sound of that.
Jay told me the story about his son, and we were in his garage, and we were putting some flooring and doing some stuff in his garage and making it a real racing garage.
A fancy garage.
A fancy garage. Yeah. And he showed me the poles. And did I ask you why it was like that, Jay? Or I forget how it came up.
I think I pointed out. You were cutting the flooring pieces around in a very expert way around these round posts.
Uh-huh.
And I said, do you notice how it's not painted all the way to the bottom there, man?
And I said, what's going on with that? He said his son, his son is young. I don't know how old Chuck was, but, Chuck's
he was
young.
early 21, 22 years old. I think it's between jobs, living at home. He was a rebound kid. And I said, get down there and paint these poles. You're not going to work. Go paint these poles.
Yeah, you're going to do something around the house.
Sure. Yeah.
And so
he had just a rattle can, right? And, he didn't want to paint the floor. So his solution, rather than masking it off, his solution was just stop about a foot from the floor.
There's like a foot from the ceiling. There's just in the paint. It just stops. And a foot from the floor. And he's done with that paint, Dad.
It's good.
Yeah,
it's good.
Jay. Okay. Here's the question. What'd you think of the indictment?
Well, I've got a lot to think about, but I think the most important part, and I think all your listeners are smart, and so they kind of understand. I don't have to start at 50,000 feet. But the shocking part, frankly, man, is they're not specifying what crime they tried to hide by falsifying the business records. They don't tell us what it is. That is shocking to me, man. And, if you're going to try jury trials in the South, you got to be able to quote some scripture. I confess, I don't have a lot of scripture memorized, but I have this one. I use it in my practice a lot. I've told it to juries. The wicked flee even when no one pursues, but the righteous are bold as a lion.
Mm-hmm.
That's Proverbs 28:1. The wicked flee even when no one pursues, but the righteous are bold as a lion. Why is he not disclosing what the underlying crime was? That's being bold as a lion, man.
He doesn't have to tell you.
Well, he's going to have to tell Mr. Trump.
Amen.
I mean, there is this little thing called due process. And it's just shocking to me, man. I cannot. I've thought about it a lot and tried to come up with the best explanation for why they would not disclose that. And the best explanation I have is they're not sure what they want it to be, which is just shocking.
I mean, is there not? And forget, I'm a black and white guy. We've talked about this a lot. That that it is my constant fascination and infuriation with the legal process that nothing's black and nothing's white. It's all gray.
That's right.
And somehow I surround myself with lawyers. I don't know why, but I do that.
Personality.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's true. That's true. Is there not a duty on the part of the DA when he issues the indictment to tell the accused what exactly they're being charged with?
The key word in that sentence was duty. And we're going to get into some gray, and it's going to drive you crazy. But can you still hear me, man?
Yeah, no, you're good. You're fine.
Okay, I'm sorry. There's another call coming in. I think that may be the DA Braggs. He may be listening to this. So he is elected. Braggs, isn't that his name? Braggs?
Yeah, Alvin Bragg.
He's elected. So he might say to you, well, his duty is to the voters. This indictment appears to me he's placing the interest of his voters ahead of the accused. But in the law, yes. In the law, by due process, prosecutors must give a defendant fair notice of what they're being charged with. Absolutely, that's in the law. And I believe that's one of the first things his lawyers will do. They'll either just move to dismiss it and say, well, you haven't even – a motion to dismiss, they accept as true everything in the indictment, even those facts don't state a crime. That's what a motion to dismiss is, and I believe that they'll file that. Or they may just ask for more – there's various processes in different states. Probably in New York it's called a bill of particulars. And where they just say, well, Judge, you've got to tell us more. And it's more than just that. That's the big one, man. Right? I mean, here's the law. The whole thing's odd. Let me pull back and talk about it from
Yes, please.
If we got
we do. We got plenty of time.
Okay, so meter's running, so we're good. Under New York law, it is a crime to falsify a business record if you do it with intent to defraud. Well, fraud is a crime, man. So why do you have to make falsifying a business record to defraud a crime? Just start right there. That's an odd law.
And that's just the state side, right? That's the state. The misdemeanor.
We're just first base. Yeah,
okay.
We're just first base. Oh, we got to bake this cake right now. We just put some flour out on the counter, and then now we're going to put some Crisco in it. But yeah, if you falsify a business record with intent to defraud, that's misdemeanor falsification of business record.
Right.
Well, my first question is, who do they claim Trump was trying to defraud? Well, they don't say. Although they sort of kind of say, well, he was trying to defraud the voting public.
Yes.
Well, the voting public is not going to see his general ledger.
Right.
I mean, my word.
Right.
If you're cooking the books to defraud somebody, it has to be someone that's going to be looking at your books. Otherwise, it doesn't matter.
So
right. So I mean, here's what this crime I think is really about, man. What are they doing? Well, here's what happens. Right, a business wants to get a loan. They don't have enough money, so they cook the books.
Right.
And they give them a profit and loss statement that says they made $400,000 when they really didn't. They made $40,000. Okay, well, that's a crime. I get that. That's fraud. I mean, it's fraud independent.
And I know who's being defrauded.
Because they're looking at the data.
Right. And they're looking at your books.
Yeah, and on that basis, they issue a loan, and then when you default on the loan, they can say, well, you tricked me, you lied to me, you frauded me. I totally get all that. Well, I don't. Who got frauded here? It should be defrauded, but I'm from the South.
I get it. No, I like it. Who got frauded, Jay?
I like malapropisms every now and then. So that's point number one, man. But then New York law is even odder. It goes on to say that, well, anyone who falsifies a business record with intent to defraud actually is committing a felony if the intent to defraud includes, I don't know how I can include this, but if it includes an intent to conceal another crime.
Right.
Or either to commit another crime or conceal it. I don't think he's really, well, I don't know what he's basing it on, man, because they won't tell us. But I would think if I'm being charged, well, you cooked your books to hide another crime. All right, well, tell me what the crime was. Well, I ain't telling you.
Well, but Jay, I've got a question for you. This is where the Cohen stuff, the testimony that's in the statement of facts in the indictment, you get the Cohen testimony. So what they're trying to say is, well, Cohen pled guilty to basically a federal election crime, and therefore, because Trump was part of that engagement, like it seems like that's what they're kind of directing towards.
Well,
right?
they're insinuating
that, right,
but they're not saying that.
Correct.
Cohen, first of all, the fact that he pled guilty to that crime doesn't prove he committed the crime.
Correct.
Trust me, people plead guilty every day to crimes they didn't commit. Matt, you wouldn't have any idea about this. Companies every day settle lawsuits when they didn't do anything wrong. It happens every day.
Drives me insane.
It's the cheapest way to solve a problem. But yeah, so Cohen, here's what I think this kind of gets down to. Cohen, I think his name.
Yeah, that's right.
I guess it's an established fact that he gave what's her name $130,000 to shut up, Stormy Daniels or whatever her name is, and there's no question. I think that you know where he got the money to pay her.
Where's that?
He drew out a loan against his home equity line of credit. My word. I mean, my word. This is like the Keystone Cops. So, yeah, he pays her some money to shut up. And then he gets back with Trump and them and says, hey, oh, shoot. How about a little something for the effort here?
Mm-hmm.
He's a sniffy. The Dalai Lama. I say, hey, Lama, how about a little something for the effort? And they said, oh, okay, well, we'll pay you money back. They actually grossed it up, and they reported it as attorney's fees. And that's the claim of the misdemeanor, is they were, on the books, they were showing this payment to him as attorney's fees when he was really repaying the,
so, and I want to hit that real quick, and then we have to take a quick time out. But so the argument is, under New York law, I mean, the argument that they're making, because you've established what the law, is to prevent, which is it designed to prevent a business from defrauding someone. But their argument in the specifics of this case is that Donald, let's say that everything they're saying is correct, that Michael Cohen, acting on behalf of Donald Trump, paid Stormy Daniels $130,000 to enter into an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, so as not to talk about the alleged affair between herself and Donald Trump.
Right.
But then what Alvin Bragg is arguing is that then Donald Trump, under New York law, is legally bound to, on his business ledger, then describe that transaction as non-disclosure agreement paid to Stormy Daniels so as to not talk about the affair that I had with her.
Yeah, or we didn't even have to have the last part, but just payment to Stormy Daniels for non-disclosure agreement.
Which is a public document.
No, it's his private business records.
So how would I
public document?
So how do we see this to begin with?
Well, you got to subpoena it.
Yeah.
The only way we know anything about this man is because I was about to call her a bad name. I shouldn't do that. That film star blabbed. I was about to say open her mouth, but I shouldn't even say that. The film star blabbed about it. And then the feds got on Cohen's trail, and he pled guilty, and that's when these facts started coming. No one would have ever known anything about it. Here's the irony.
No, hold on. I got to get into the irony after the break, because I'm being told I got to hush up. Hold on just a second. Jay Sinclair's with us. Cameron Smith is with us. I'm surrounded by lawyers. And you on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. For all of you on the Super Text line currently calling Cameron Smith a rhino, and they do occasionally.
No one's doing that right now.
Okay, fine. They called you. No, they didn't call you a rhino. I had a guy that called you. Ray wrote in and said, "Oh, it's Cameron Romney."
I bet Ray is one of those yellow-bellied surrender ponies. I bet.
He called you Cameron Romney.
Cameron Romney.
Anyway, Cameron
it's pretty
just
good, Ray. I'm not going to lie.
Cameron just said something nice about Donald Trump. I'll have y'all know.
I did.
Yeah.
He's consistent. He's authentic. I mean, I know that sounds wild, but he has been the same Donald Trump since the moment that he ran for office. Love it or hate it, he hasn't changed.
He's a little bit Trumpier. I mean, it's like the new and improved. Now with even more Trumpy.
Even more sauce.
Anyway, Jay Sinclair is with us as well. Jay, only a couple of minutes. I have to take another time out, but if you have time, I'd love to continue this conversation because this is a fascinating unpacking of this. And it is, I mean, I try not to say words like unprecedented when it comes to the law and legal things because, one, I don't have the wealth of knowledge to be able to say that type of thing. Mm-hmm. But this feels that way, boy. If it's not, it's rare that we're getting this.
It's unprecedented. It is. And I'd say this too, Matt. The press keeps focusing, he's the first ex-president to be indicted. That's not what's going on. That's not the point. They're not indicting him because he used to be president. They're indicting him because he's running for president. Mm. He's a current candidate. He is the leading current candidate for the Republican nomination to be president. It's not about the past, man. It's about November 2024. And the best example of that, here's the best evidence of that, man. We know who made the entries on these business records. It's in these pleadings. The chief financial officer and the controller. Uh-huh. They're the ones that actually entered these documents into their accounting system using these words. Huh.
Donald,
why didn't they get in?
Yeah, I was about to say Donald. So Donald Trump didn't enter this himself.
Oh no, no, he's not down there with a little green, beady. No, he's got people that do that, Matt. And the feds or the prosecutor knew who the people were. He didn't indict them. You know why?
Because they're not Donald Trump and they're not running for president.
Because they're not running for president.
Yeah, there you go. All right, hold on. We're going to turn the corner to the federal part of this. We'll get Cameron's take on it and Jay's take on it in a moment as we continue to break down the nonsense that is the indictment against Donald Trump and the perp walk for what it was and the response by Donald Trump, which was robust. I'll ask Cameron, because I think he's in a better position on the political side of things, to answer the question, will there be a gag order in this case? Because there isn't one right now, but after last night's speech, there might be one pretty soon, and I don't know that that's not what Donald Trump wants at this stage of the proceedings. It's 1:31 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Tennessee Men's Clinic is now 2 locations to serve you. They're right here in Nashville, Tennessee, and they were the first to focus solely on men's health care with regard to what your numbers are saying in terms of blood work and how that affects you and your energy level. If you're feeling low energy, if you have a lack of energy either in the backyard or a lack of energy and enthusiasm in places like the bedroom, because frankly, with the care that they do at Tennessee Men's Clinic, they see a lot of this, and if they catch it early, they can identify it and they can prescribe a successful remedy to the issues that you're seeing. And you can get back that energy level before it begins manifesting itself in other ways, like, well, for example, the bedroom. And now 2 locations to serve you, one right in downtown Nashville and one in Cool Springs. So if you're to the south in Spring Hill or Columbia or even out in Tullahoma or McMinnville, wherever you might be within the sound of my voice, it's time to get to the Tennessee Men's Clinic. Allow these guys to schedule an appointment for you and get you back to the energy level that you expect and that you deserve. TennesseeMen'sClinic.com. That's TennesseeMen'sClinic.com or the number 615-208-9090. 208-9090. Tennessee Men's Clinic. It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. My name is Matt Murphy. I'm the white middle in the Oreo cookie that is these lawyers. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know. I'm just going to give it up. I don't know what I was trying to do. I'm like the meat in the middle of the sandwich, and you guys are the bread.
Just stop. Just
I should
eject. Pull the ripcord. Get out of that one.
You're the chocolate chip in my oatmeal raisin.
I bet that Jay's just giggling on the phone lines right now because I'm trying to come up with some appropriate analogy. I'm just going to get out of this by saying Jay Sinclair's with us, as is Cameron Smith, talking about the indictment that finally came down. And Jay, you told me last time we talked, you said, "No, Matt, we don't know. We got to find out. It's in the indictment. We'll know when it's in the indictment. And you've alluded to this, that, well, we know kind of half of the story now, but none of – so it's not enough. All of this initial stuff, even if all of that's true, even if he's absolutely in violation of what we've talked about, that's the statute of limitations is passed on that piece on this, right?
All the statutes, right? But I got to say this on the lack of disclosure. You know, the people on the internet are so funny, man. There's some really clever people, right? And you remember what Pelosi said about Obamacare. So somebody posts this meme on the internet. Well, you got to convict Trump to find out what the crime was.
That's true. That's right.
Yeah.
You got to
pass the bill to find out what it is.
Well, and someone I'm also getting. You'll appreciate this. Kathy has written in. You know, we've got the Super Talk TV that runs now, Jay, and I normally have a whiteboard behind me. I did not have time to do the whiteboard today because I had some business obligations. But Kathy has now said that my sign tomorrow should say in big bold letters, "Who got frauded?"
Who got frauded? Love it.
Because somebody had to get frauded.
Yeah, no, that's it. I mean, you know, come on.
So the other side, in order to bring the case, they have to tie it to a separate crime, and that's the one they're not telling us what they've tied it to, right?
That's right. That's right. But they do say that the accounting itself, which is, you know, what the basis of the charge, was half of it. All happened before, all the latest in 2017, more than 5 years before this indictment was issued. And the statute of limitations for this claim is 5 years. So they've got a real statute of limitations problem.
Even with the other piece?
Yeah. And absolutely. The felony charge, the misdemeanor just cooking your books is 2 year statute.
Uh-huh.
But cooking your books to hide a crime, another crime, is a 5 year statute of limitations. And, so they're past that. So there's going to be a real interesting motion filed about that.
I happen to be talking to someone that understands the concepts of statute of limitations.
Man, in the technicalities of the law lies the defense of the innocent.
That's spoken like a man that defended Goodyear to great success against Lily Ledbetter's claims of mistreatment. I mean, which I'm always amused when we bring this case up because next to nobody realizes that ultimately that was decided on the statute of limitations, right?
Absolutely.
So how do they get around it? How do they get around that?
Well, here's this odd provision in New York law, and I can't wait to hear this argument play out. This is going to be hilarious. In calculating the time limitation applicable to the statute, the following period shall not be included. All right, so some things can stop the clock from running, man. And here is one of them. Any period during which the defendant was continuously outside this state.
Like when he's residing at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue?
Yeah, when he's in the White House. And now, clearly, the purpose of this provision in the law is, well, you can't go and hide, all right, and avoid service just to let the statute of limitations run. I think Captain Ron, there was a movie, Captain Ron, and it's funny. Anyway, this guy is out for hire captain on boats, and he says, well, I can go back to the United States now. It's been more than 7 years.
Right.
We're never told, you know, but it's pretty clear. Yeah. So the state of New York's going to have to say, well, we get more time because he wasn't living at Trump Tower, and we really didn't know where to find him. we couldn't charge him because he moved out of New York, and we weren't real sure where he was.
Well, and
that's going to be hilarious.
What do you think about the issue when they say? Because if I'm them, I'm arguing we couldn't charge him because he was the sitting president of the United States.
Well, if I'm the judge, I'd say, well, why you should have given it a shot. Or why did you wait 2 more years? Well, he hadn't been the president for 2 years.
Right.
So, no, I if I were the judge, I wouldn't give that any credit at all. They could charge him. I believe they could charge him while president. They may not be able to try him, but they could have charged him.
What about
They could find out Biden, because I'll tell you what, if the Attorney General of Texas or Utah or Alabama or Florida doesn't charge Joe Biden with a crime, but between down the election, I'm really going to be disappointed.
So,
hey, Ange, you know how you fight fire?
With a hose.
We need somebody out there fighting fire with fire.
So, don't get me started on Andy Griffith, because I saw Man in a Hurry the other day, and it reminded me of you. I'm gonna go down. I'm gonna take a nap and go over to Thelma Lou's and watch TV. So, why 34 counts, Jay? I mean, 34 counts.
Well, you know, if you don't have one good count, if you ain't got one big bullet, shoot 34 little ones. I mean, that's as bizarre as anything else about it, man. It only has to do with these payments to Cohen for the Stormy Daniels deal. There's this other woman mentioned in the statement of facts, but it's not in the indictment. So it's just that, and they paid him out over a year. They were sending him a monthly check, man, and to issue each month's check, they had to make 4 accounting entries. Well, one of them was actually signing the check.
Uh-huh.
But so there's 4. So for each payment, they're charging 4 separate times, and there was 12 payments or 14, whatever. So that's the 30. It all has to do with this $130,000 to Stormy Daniels. And here's the irony about all this: it's alleged in here anyway when they were first talking about it. Trump said, "Well, what you want? $130,000? Well, I just give payment in cash. Just pay in cash." And the lawyer said, "No, we can't do that." Well, if they paid her in cash, the DA couldn't even say it was a crime. It'd all be off the books. It's bizarre.
So, I mean, before we let you go, Jay, what is your analysis of the design here? And it might be getting out of the legal realm and more in the political realm, but, I mean, would you be surprised if they just try to drag this out? I mean, is that the idea here based on the facts of the case?
I don't know. I mean, yeah, that's outside my area of expertise, man. I don't know. But again, I've told you a lot of odd things about this, and I really think the oddest part of it, truly the oddest part, is they identified the people who actually made the entries into the accounting documents. That's the crime, right? Is falsifying business records to hide a crime. Well, they identified, and these are the people who falsified the business records, not Trump. Well, they didn't indict them, man.
All right, Jay, one more time. How do you fight fire, Jay?
With a hose.
Well, no, and one of our super texters said, no, not with a hose. That's what got Trump into trouble in the first place. Jay, I love you. Got to go, man. Take care.
See you, buddy.
All right, there's Jay Sinclair. We'll come back in just a couple of minutes. Actually, we won't come back. We've got a couple of minutes additional. I want to put this to bed and move on to some state matters. From a political perspective, you're dragging this out. You're hoping that you get a couple of more from a couple of other favorable grand juries, and you're trying to put enough stinky on Trump to either rough him up if he is the primary nominee or to prevent him from becoming the primary nominee?
I guess. I mean, the whole issue for Democrats right now is, I mean, this case is very weak. But the other cases where you got Trump on record in Florida saying, or wasn't Florida? Where was it was Georgia. Georgia, where he was on.
I need 11,000 votes.
Yeah, like those cases seem maybe a little bit more of an actual threat. But the fact is, Trump's loving this because you took a weak case where even like CNN is saying this is a weak case.
Yeah, they've already transitioned from, ooh, we got him to, well, there's more coming.
There's more coming. And so what he's doing is he's bundling it all together, and he's saying all these things are related. They're all the same thing. It's all coming after me. And so I think they're going to have to drag it out as long as they can, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's a motion to dismiss here, like Jay was saying, and that it's done quick because
You think the judge would do that, though, in New York?
Yeah, I understand the political bias argument, but if I'm a judge and I'm going to have to do this on appeal, I'm going to have to say, hey, Mr. Prosecutor, you got to give me something that I can work with. You're making me jump through a lot of hoops to get to a point where I can even sustain a case.
I mean, but even if you're the most liberal judge on the face of the earth, if you're intelligent enough to read the indictment and to understand, no matter how you rule, no matter how a jury decides what's going to happen on appeal, I mean, and I don't know how you overcome the statute of limitations.
But I could make an argument on the statute of limitations. It's not a good one.
Like because the presidential argument, right?
You could say, well, then what Jay's question's right. Well, why'd you wait 2 years after? And so I think the situation here is this is going to get chunked in my mind. At some point, somebody's going to say, hey, this is just not there. The substance isn't there. It's not great. I don't see a clear pathway where Trump ultimately loses the case. I see a more likely situation where the case just gets tossed.
And we can talk about this in a second, but it only serves to bolster Trump, certainly with his base. I do believe, and you might disagree with this, that or maybe not, it reminds people how much the right people hated him so much.
Yeah.
Even if I don't care for him, even if I don't care for his style, and vast majority of conservatives I talk to agree that most of the big issues were handled properly under the Trump presidency, but it was the style issue, and it's the style issue that concerns so many people that he can't beat a Democrat in a general election. But this reminds people how much the right people hate him for all the wrong reasons.
But I don't know. I've said this all along. Who else comes to the table as a result of this and says, I'm talking in a general, I get it in a primary because we're victims like Trump. We're next. He's there was Tucker Carlson and Glenn Beck. It was like, he is a symbol for all of us. Like, I get that in the primary. But in the general election, who as a result of this shows up for Trump that wasn't going to show up previously? Because I see a lot of independents looking at it and saying, hey, I don't like Joe Biden. I'm not excited about this, but this is pretty dramatic. And so
I think there's a couple of factors that I want to address on that. We'll do that in a moment. It's 150 on Super. And Greg's been holding for a long time. Greg, I'll get to you. And your call, 615-737-9986. It's 150 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I'm going to need to speak with Holly and David. They are the owners of Savory Spice at L&L Market, right there on Charlotte Pike in Nashville. Also a location in Franklin. What a great store it is. What a fabulous smell that you get when you walk in. I mean, spices and salts and combinations, all kinds imaginable. They've got soups and they've got they got popcorn in there. They've just got everything you can possibly imagine to up that food game. And I have to talk to Holly and David because it's a problem. Savory Spice has become a problem in my family because my wife is creating such delicious foods with Savory Spice, I cannot help but eat them. Belle K's over there losing weight. I'm gaining weight. Thank you, Savory Spice. In all seriousness, folks, this is some deliciousness that you have to see for yourself. Up the food game. You're already buying the nice cut of meat or the great veggies at the farmer's market. Let's up that food game by upping your spice game with Savory Spice. That's how you sell product. Savory Spice is a problem. I got the Glock store starting on Monday. Have you been out there?
Mm-mm.
Impressive. It's really impressive. What were we talking about? I forget.
Well, I'm going to.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN, Matt Murphy and you until 3 o'clock. We'll give it to the Brian Wilson Show. That's called The Drive. Just at 3 o'clock. We're here till then. There's also nasty weather coming through. Need to make you aware, the National Weather Service has issued a severe thunderstorm watch. This is a watch for a lot of counties in our listening area, to include Sumner and Williamson and Cheatham and Dixon and Wilson and Macon and Davidson and Montgomery and Robertson and Rutherford and Smith and Murray. And it ends tonight. Now, that's a watch. That means conditions are favorable for nasty weather. If there is a warning, that means you're getting rained on and maybe some hail and maybe some strong winds and the possibility of a drop-down tornado. Last I checked, I know McMurray's back in the newsroom, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, but last I checked, this is a lot of rain, wind, severe thunderstorms, and tornadoes can always result out of things like this, but that's not a high probability right now. Am I right in that, Maury?
Yeah, right now that's not a high probability. However, these same storm systems have produced tornadoes, deadly tornadoes, in fact, as of today. So there is that possibility.
Was that Missouri? Missouri? Okay. Yeah, so there you go. Well, we got news next. Cameron's going to stick around with us for a little while longer. We'll continue talking Trump indictment. We'll also ask Cameron, should the 3 Democrats be expelled from the General Assembly in the state of Tennessee? We'll get his thoughts on that and yours as well as we continue. It is the Matt Murphy Show, Super Talk 99.7 WTN, always online, 997WTN.com, and on the phones and Super Text line, 615-737-9986. Back in a moment with the Murphy Show.
Two o'clock, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Right now, it looks like 84 degrees, partly cloudy, a little breezy, and that wind's going to keep on picking up as we do have some potentially severe thunderstorms headed to mid-state right now. All of Middle Tennessee in a severe thunderstorm watch, and with that can come high winds, straight-line winds, harsh rain, and, of course, any sort of flooding opportunity. There is going to be a low risk for tornadoes as well, and we'll keep you updated with that. Right now, that tornado risk just a level 1 out of 5 on the severe weather outlook. So again, very low, but we will keep you updated with those possibilities right here on Super Talk 99.7. Weather coming up in just a few minutes. Former President Trump, now a criminal defendant. Trump was arraigned yesterday in New York City court for felony charges related to a hush money payment to adult film actress Stormy Daniels. Prosecutors say that the payment violated campaign finance law, but Dan Abrams says that prosecutors may need to detail how the charges would result in a potentially harsher penalty.
The falsifying of business records is typically a misdemeanor, right? And the difference here between a misdemeanor and a felony is critical. Basically, the prosecutors are saying it rises to the level of a felony because it was part of an effort to conceal another crime. But what the prosecutor isn't doing yet is explaining exactly what crime that is.
Here in Tennessee, Nashville Democrat State Rep Justin Jones is one of 3 lawmakers who could be expelled from the State House of Representatives for violating decorum. They used a bullhorn while leading a protest for stricter gun control during last Thursday's House session. Jones gave an interview on CNN this morning defending the action.
We believe that we were acting in the spirit of our state constitution and the United States Constitution to voice the concerns and grievances of our constituents. That's why thousands of people gathered with us on Thursday once again and Monday, and they'll be back this Thursday when we're ousted, when they threaten to oust us.
Jones, Memphis Democrat Justin Pearson, and Knoxville Democrat Gloria Johnson are all facing expulsion. And Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer signs a bill repealing the state's nearly century-old law that criminalized abortion. Ike Ajaji.
The bill made it a felony, punishable by up to 4 years in prison for anyone who administers drugs for inducing a miscarriage. After the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade last summer, questions remained about whether or not the 1931 law would be put back in place. In September, a state judge there ruled the ban unconstitutional, and a couple of months later, Michigan voters chose to add protections for reproductive rights. The state's House and Senate passed a bill last month revoking the law, to which Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer signed, saying in part, standing up for people's fundamental freedoms is the right thing to do.
And that is the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
Here we are, and here we go. It's 2:05. Welcome in the Matt Murphy Radio Show. In progress until 3 o'clock. We'll hand off to the drive at that time. It's information-fueled and opinion-driven news talk. Thank you for being with us. I sincerely appreciate each and every one of you. And do me a favor, will you, because I need all the help I can get, tell a friend or a neighbor about the Matt Murphy Show on your radio from noon until 3, Monday through Friday on Super Talk. Cameron Smith, it's a great opportunity to talk to a good conservative. His name is Cameron Smith. He writes for the TennesseeNAL.com. Don't hold that against him. He also fills in for me with regularity. He's a voice that's known throughout Middle Tennessee, and I appreciate you being here.
It's fun to be. I always forget to press the button. It's fun to be here.
I think Bell does it on purpose.
I know. And sometimes he turns it off.
At this point,
he presses other people's buttons.
Of course he does.
He presses my buttons every day.
He is an official member of the air staff. He can press his own button.
But sometimes he messes with me. He likes it. But yes, I'm glad to be here.
We've got severe weather moving through the area. I was just going to give a look at, and I know that Stefano DiPietro. Did I say that right that time? Stefano DiPietro just updated us on this forecast, but I was looking at the actual radar. Nasty weather from time to time through the state of Tennessee. Just last weekend, we were on air at about 2 o'clock in the morning on Saturday morning, Friday night, Saturday morning. So this nastiness is heading toward Dixon. I mean, it's all over East Tennessee. West Tennessee, pardon me. It is all through Memphis, and this large line is heading our way, and it's going to bring rain throughout the afternoon and colder conditions tomorrow. Just be weather aware. If you've got appointments or you're out and about this afternoon, just be on the lookout for the nasty weather.
That's the reason I'm wearing my Hawaiian shirt today, because it's a very good opportunity to...
I noticed that you glanced down at the insignia because I've made disparaging remarks about the insignia.
Okay. I went to Washington and Lee. The symbol is a trident, and it is not a swastika. There's not...
I said... Just hold on.
Come on now.
I did not call it a swastika. I said, ooh, and you went, what? And I said, for a minute, I thought that the insignia on your shirt was a swastika.
It's a trident. It's fairly aggressive for a Hawaiian shirt, which I got this from the Washington and Lee bookstore on clearance, and I mean, that's probably why.
The words on clearance in that sentence were superfluous and unnecessary.
He got it from where?
The college bookstore at Washington and Lee.
In Virginia.
Oh, well, that's definitely a real Hawaiian shirt.
That's not fascist or Nazism. That's racism. Because it
Also
came from
appropriation.
Washington and Lee.
Yes.
We know who those two were.
We've heard about
what those were all about.
They've talked about changing the name of the institution.
Have they really?
Yes. Yes. It ultimately has not happened, but Robert E. Lee, bad guy, got to change the name of the institution. And I'm like, well, this was after he became president of Washington College, subsequently named Washington and Lee University, after the Civil War. And so I've written a column on this and talked about it, that I don't see a need to celebrate the Confederacy, I also think that learning from our history is really important, and the idea of just removing everything.
Well, and if you are going to begin this business, where it ends is an erasure of broad sections of American history.
Yeah,
and that's a dangerous thing to do.
Well, most history, because the truth is, most of us are complicated people. The idea of we can only have monuments and things named after completely righteous people. Oh, man, that's a short list.
Look, you're either good or you're bad.
Right.
And if you want to know which you are, go to the woke and they will tell you.
Right.
If you agree with them, good. If you don't, bad. And you must be destroyed.
Yeah, and as you well know, I don't subscribe to that.
Let's, the Republicans may, and I don't necessarily want to couch it in these terms, but I'm going to. Might be considered a little unfair, but if they don't expel the 3 Democrats at this point, I think they're going to disappoint a lot of their constituents.
Probably.
But I don't know that it's not the appropriate thing to censure them. You heard me say it, and boot them off committees for the rest of the session. Demonstrate that you're not going to put up with any sort of future actions of this sort. I don't have a problem with expelling them, but there are also some consequences in doing that. And I think the three Democrats become somewhat of martyrs if you expel them.
Yeah, and I've had this based on the removing folks from committee assignments in Congress, trying to expel members of Congress. Like, once you start playing this game, you know who should decide whether those people are there or not? The constituents. And if they are embarrassing them, they decide we're not going to send you back. That's who should decide that. I understand that if you are you're disrupting official business, then there have to be consequences. And I fully support that. But as far as removing folks, that's the ultimate measure for that legislative body. And I just really think in cases where it's not abundantly clear that they need to be removed, let the constituents decide that.
The Tennessean wrote an op-ed, or an opinion piece, not an op-ed, that was published last night that was headlined, "Expelling these Tennessee lawmakers is an outrage. Cameron Sexton should show grace." I can understand the second part. I don't understand the first part. I think it's an outrage that you had members defying the rules of the body and encouraging individuals to shut down an active session in the gallery, which is what was happening.
Yeah.
So maybe the headline's a little bit of a clickbait grabber. Sure. I mean, it's certainly not an outrage. I don't know if it's the smartest move, but it's not an outrage.
A legislative body has to be able to continue their business, right? I think that's just the way it needs to work. In a civil society, you've got to be able to do that. And so you have to have decorum and rules, right? If you'll recall, there was this thing January 6th about this big interruption of a legislative process, right? You may have recalled that.
I think I've read something about it somewhere.
And Democrats were absolutely like, how dare these people interrupt this process? And I'm like, okay, you got a point there. Like, we need to let the legislative process work itself out in a civil manner. Agreed. And now we're in a situation where these folks disrupted the legislative proceedings of the body. And then it's, how dare you?
Well, I'll take it one step further. So for the last 3 years, what we all saw, and obviously it was not a good look. It was bad.
Right.
There was a riot going on. Not everybody, but some of them. Well, the Democrats couldn't just take what was there and present it for what it was. They had to up it a level. And riot wasn't enough. Insurrection, that was the word that they keyed on. And their defense of the use of the term was what you just said, that you had groups of people that were intentionally attempting to disrupt the active actions of a duly elected body.
Correct.
Okay. So, and we go back and forth and arguing, if this rises. Cameron Sexton steps out and says, well, based on that, we had an insurrection. And the same people that have been arguing that January 6th was an insurrection based on that logic, whoa, they were like, no, this isn't it. Well, how exactly isn't that so? Sexton, his point was that this is worse because the elected officials themselves were leading it as opposed to January 6th. And, and I have a difficult time arguing. What do you think will happen?
I think that they probably are going to have to apologize. As you mentioned, it will probably be a formulaic exercise, and then we'll move on. I do think if the legislature removes these three, we're going to be in a situation where they will use this as a fundraising political martyr. This is political persecution. You see, they're crying it against Trump, but they're doing it here at home. That kind of thing.
Here's also the political reality, folks. And I understand a lot of people in Middle Tennessee and throughout the state are saying actions have consequences.
Sure.
Do what you were elected to do. Expel these three rabble-rousers and let's move on. Know this. Here's what the law says about it. They are expelled for this session. The county commissions in their individual seats have to appoint a special individual to sit in that seat until such time as they have a special election in the off season between sessions. They're eligible to run for that seat, and I promise you they'll win it. All three of them are guaranteed to be back next session if they're expelled. because their voters will put them there as martyrs.
Yes, and then they look more powerful because they say, you tried to remove me,
well, here we are.
and here I am again.
And ultimately, I was talking with Jody Barrett about this, ultimately, they are inconsequential in terms of governance. I mean, no offense to you Democrats out there, but Republicans have elected enough, or individuals in Tennessee have elected enough Republicans that they don't need the Democrats for anything.
No. And here's what I would say, and this is where Cameron Sexton, I think, should be, is I'm going to be magnanimous here because I'm more interested in governing in Tennessee than I am in playing these little hand slappy games. Because you're absolutely right, those folks will come back, and then we will be discussing this sort of like war between Republicans and Democrats. When we should just say, look, we got the numbers. Republicans are going to move on and govern. And I think that's right now, Republicans, and this isn't just Tennessee Republicans across the board are getting drawn in to a lot of distractions, and they're missing things like that Supreme Court race in Wisconsin. They're missing things that actually matter. And I don't know if that's necessarily by design, but it's what's happening, and it's a problem for us.
Did you notice in North Carolina, a Democrat switched to the Republican Party, and now they were missing a supermajority by one vote, and now they
have one. Yeah, I actually have the story pulled up where the North Carolina lawmaker, it's a woman by the name of Tricia Cotham, gave the GOP a veto-proof majority in the legislature by switching parties, saying, essentially, I can't put up with it anymore. The modern-day Democratic Party has become unrecognizable to me and others across the state. I will not be controlled. I will not be controlled by anyone. The turning point for Cotham, she explained, was when she was criticized for using the American flag and praying hands emoji on social media and on her vehicles. I'm not kidding. Democrats have been, quote, blasting me on Twitter, calling me names, coming after my family and coming after my children. It's wrong. She added a woman cursed at her at a store that she was shopping at with her son. House Minority Leader Robert Reeves said Cotham should have instead resigned from her seat because she campaigned to pursue a Democrat policy agenda in a heavily Democrat district. Now, just a few months later, Cotham is changing parties. I have a lot of Democrats telling me the same. I think you had Democrats on the floor of the General Assembly in the state of Tennessee, primarily Caucus Leader Camper, Representative Camper, who were appalled at the actions of the three amigos standing on the floor and the well of the House of Representatives, and said as much initially. Then eventually they galvanized behind a unified statement.
Well, look, most folks right now recognize something's really weird in our politics, and it's not focusing on governing and the thing that actually matters and focusing on the high drama, all this stuff. Create consequences for these folks and move on. Like, that's what we need to do.
I don't, and I want to discuss this in our last segment, the woke nature of the American population today. It does not bother me that Dylan Mulvaney exists. Not one bit. I don't care. What bothers me is I am told by certain aspects of woke culture that not only am I to accept that Dylan Mulvaney exists, that I have to verbalize that Dylan Mulvaney exists exactly as they tell me he does.
Right.
Meaning he's a girl and not a boy. And that I have to accept not only that there's a transition going on, but that he was assigned gender, all of these things that I thought were matters of freedom of association have now become a matter of woke culture, in which if you decline to accept some of the premises that they put up, they set out to destroy you.
Yes.
And I think, maybe I'm being Pollyanna, but I believe, exterior to some of the companies that have fallen prey to this, and that's why I bring up Mulvaney because of Bud Light, I just believe the American public is smarter than this, and that this is going to whip back on the Democrats.
Oh, absolutely.
Fiercely.
Well, this notion, this is the Dr. Greg Champion from Birmingham says it. He calls it the culture of I-me-maniosis. And what he means is it's just about yourself, and that you have the claim that everyone else must bow to you and what you prefer and what your things are. That's not how this works. I mean, I'm teaching that to my kids. I have to learn that. But because of the way social media works, our culture works, what you're calling woke culture works, it's we have a claim to your behavior and your speech. And if you don't do it, then there's something wrong. And I just say no. I mean, I'm going to treat you how I treat you because I try to do what's right. But if you're saying I must use this pronoun or do this thing, like you're really just telling me that I got to do what you want. And you don't control me. That's part of the liberties that we have in America. I'm not going to be mean to you, but you don't get to tell me how I need to behave.
221 Super Talk 99.7 WT, and the Matt Murphy Show continues after this. You know, I mentioned the second location at Tennessee Men's Clinic. It's a pretty big deal, folks, because a lot of you guys down in South Tennessee, you've decided maybe not to make the call. Maybe you're loath to do it to begin with, but you've decided not to do it because, well, it's a long drive. Any excuse not to deal with this, and I get it. I understand that. You're looking for those excuses. But at the Tennessee Men's Clinic, gentlemen, you have answers to your issues, and I want you to begin that journey toward better health, begin that journey toward a better you with more energy, and now 2 locations to serve. You can get back to life. You can get back to a vigorous life. If you're suffering from health issues that might be sexual in nature, that can seem overwhelming. It can seem hopeless if you're constantly dealing with the issues involving low T and whatnot. It's time to get checked. Let's go ahead and schedule an appointment today at either location with the Tennessee Men's Clinic and allow these guys to help. 615-208-9090. 615-208-9090 or go to TennesseeMen'sClinic.com. That's TennesseeMen'sClinic.com and book your appointment today.
Coming up at 2:30, we look at some crime going on in Clarksville, plus a man in Texas struggling with the Find Your iPhone app on the Apple iPhone. That and more 2:30 right here. Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you much, Mac Morey. 2:25 now, so in about 5 minutes, you'll hear some of those news headlines. We look forward to that. Cameron Smith in for a couple of additional moments, and we're here till 3 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. By now, It is the viral video heard round the world. You will not hear every word of it, but you'll hear most. So if you've not seen this, I encourage you to pull it up on your social media platforms. It's even better when you see it. I will describe it this way. You will hear the voice of Kid Rock, who lives right here in our lovely community of Middle Tennessee. One of you out there knows Kid Rock, and one of you out there could tell Kid Rock that Matt Murphy desperately wants to talk to him on the radio, and you'd make this kid's day, no pun intended, if he would just call us up. One of you know him. One of you do. I know you do. And I want to talk to this man and thank him and ask him a question. I'll tell you what the question is in a moment. I'm not going to take credit for it. Cameron Smith actually asked the question during the break. It's a good one. But here's Kid Rock in response to the Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light campaign.
Grandpa's feeling a little frisky today. Let me say something to all you and be as clear and concise as possible.
He has a machine gun. Machine gun. Fully auto.
Bud Light and Anheuser-Busch. Have a terrific day.
Well, thank you, Kid Rock. Kid Rock wants us to have a terrific day if we're not Anheuser-Busch or Budweiser. In that case, he wants you to bleep yourself.
Yes.
So this has gotten a tremendous amount of action online.
Of course.
I know of no other human epitome of what I think of when I think of a Bud Light drinker, and I say this in love, than Kid Rock.
Sure.
He is exactly what I think of when I think of a Bud Light drinker. And I think the reason this viral video is happening is because this is a symbol of how just about every Bud Light drinker thinks about this stupid ad campaign with Dylan Mulvaney. But doing a viral video is one thing. You brought up the fact, and I hadn't thought of this. Bell, doesn't Kid Rock own a pretty big bar downtown?
Yes, he does.
Any word on whether he's still serving Anheuser-Busch in that bar?
I've not heard anything about it, but if he didn't well, first off, kid, if you didn't pull the beer out of the bar, you're a hypocrite.
Yeah.
But knowing you probably did.
So now I want to go find out.
I want to know.
I want to know. And if he hasn't thought of doing that yet,
that's going to make a bigger statement than that video ever would.
Yeah, of course.
I think so. I think you put up, you pull it, you pull the signage, you put up a sign that says Bud Light doesn't give a bleep about us and we don't serve Bud Light.
And that's where it starts to impact the bottom line, right?
Dang right.
Because the whole, this is the bank on all these things, is that these companies market, they basically play politics, and they're like, well, actually what we're banking on is that the average folks that drink Bud Light, they won't care enough to stop drinking Bud Light. But maybe we pick up some of these other folks that weren't thinking about drinking Bud Light.
It's what the NFL did a few years ago with the kneeling in Black Lives Matter, right? The NFL believed that the product is good enough and that we want the product enough that we're not willing to turn away from the product as a way to protest. We'll moan and complain about wokeness in the NFL or whatever, and then we'll continue to watch the games. And I think Bud Light and Anheuser-Busch, they're making that calculation too.
Yeah, and I mean, imagine that Kid Rock says no. Then Dierks Bentley, the other folks that have bars, guess what?
They'll get questioned.
They'll say, why are you still serving
Blake Shelton, why's old Red still serving Bud Light?
Yeah, what are y'all doing? And pretty soon, you got a Budweiser distributor who's saying, guys, I got a little problem here. Nobody's buying the beer anymore.
That's what bothers me more than anything about this.
Can I interject real quick?
You may.
I think, if I understand correctly, he licenses his name to that bar. I don't think he outright owns it. So he may not have the financial wherewithal to tell them to stop serving it.
Well, then take your name off the bar if they keep serving it. I mean,
there's a lot of leverage here.
Yeah, there's absolutely. There's definitely a lot of leverage.
When I go down to Lower Broadway, and I get it. I mean, I hear you. But when I'm standing outside of the bar that says Kid Rock's Bar, I don't think to myself, well, he's probably just licensing his name to that bar, and he doesn't really own or make decisions about the bar itself.
No, that's absolutely true. I completely agree with that. I think the name of it is Kid Rock's Fat Ass Honky Tonk, and something like that. But They had the jackass on the billboards, doing the back kick, and that was supposed to be the play on the ass.
Yeah, well, my point is, if the listeners who go downtown and frequent these bars start asking and saying, hey, do y'all still serve this? And they say yes, and they walk out, now it starts.
What about our man John Rich? I mean, John Rich is a well-known conservative voice in this town. Does he not own a couple of bars?
I'm sorry, it's Kid Rock's Big Ass Honky Tonk and Rock and Roll Steakhouse.
Yeah, everyone online is saying that Kid Rock doesn't own the bar, that it's licensed. The owner of Tootsie's, Steve Smith, owns Kid Rock. He just uses his name.
And that's a very common practice, too.
Sure. Well, okay. How about Tootsie's? I mean, we can go down the list of just say, okay.
Well, the point is that I don't, the whole boycott, I don't get into all of that. I try to avoid these tactics that are utilized by liberals to try to change company culture. But I do believe in using your money as a vehicle to your voice.
Yes. Money, to me, and the Supreme Court disagrees with me on this, but I think money's speech.
Absolutely.
I think how you spend your money, and the big grand gestures type thing where it's like, we must boycott, we got to do all, I don't care. Just don't spend money. I think Daily Wire has a campaign, Jeremy's Razors. Don't give your money to people who hate you.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, I can work with that.
No,
I like that idea.
But what I want to see is, and once again, I'm not turning this against Kid Rock, but if the fact of the matter is he doesn't own the bar, that maybe is a different matter. But are you going to continue to give your name to something that utilizes the services of Anheuser-Busch? I guarantee you they sell more Budweiser and Bud Light in Kid Rock's bar than any other beer.
That's probably true.
So, they own Anheuser-Busch is like 50% of the market.
Right.
So, once again, calculated measure. We'll continue this discussion without Cameron Smith. He's got to run. But I've got to go to Mac Morey, who's looking at me saying, Murph, I got the news. Okay, it's news time.
Now 2:33, I'm Mac Morey with your top stories. Right now, 83 degrees and a cloudy day in the mid-state. We're monitoring some severe weather that can come later this afternoon in the form of harsh straight-line winds, some flooding possibilities, and a low chance for an isolated tornado or two. Right now, a tornado warning just went out of effect in Trigg and Marshall County. That's in Kentucky, just northwest of Clarksville, Tennessee, near Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And that storm, even though the tornado warning has just gone out of effect, you look at that storm system, it is still rotating in that area, so we're monitoring that. Stick with Super Talk. Got a weather forecast coming to you in just about 2 minutes. A 33-year-old Clarksville man going to prison for 12 and a half years for child exploitation and destroying evidence. The U.S. Attorney's Office for Middle Tennessee says starting in 2019, Kevin Figueroa sent lewd photos to a fake dating app account he thought he was created by a 15-year-old girl. He eventually showed up at a Clarksville apartment complex where he had arranged to have sex with the girl, but he was met by FBI agents instead, and during questioning, he started to delete apps on his phone. Over in Texas, a man in Richmond is looking for answers from Apple after people keep coming to his door claiming he stole their iPhones and AirPods. Alex Stone.
His name is Scott Schuster, and he lives in suburban Houston. He says every few months over the last couple of years, people show up frantic, sometimes in the middle of the night, claiming they tracked their stolen Apple products in the Find My iPhone app to his home, like this woman.
And the last ping location was right here.
They demand he has her stolen items.
Had to wake up and go answer the door and explain to them that I don't have their device.
As people are angry, he worries about the safety of his family. He swears he's not stealing Apple products and says he's written Apple but never hears back. It's unclear why Find My iPhone is sending people to his home.
And that is the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
Hey, friends, it's Matt Murphy. We've talked a lot about Defend Systems over the past several weeks for obvious reasons. Defend Systems engaged in consultation and gave expert training to the Covenant School, and I firmly believe, and I think the community agrees with me, that lives were saved as a result. This training matters. It is not perfect. We do not claim that it's perfect, but Defend Systems is a life safety and security consultation firm based right here in Middle Tennessee. I know Brink Fiddler, and I know the great job that he does helping facilities like yours manage and measure against threats that could be coming through your front door through active shooter response, workplace violence prevention, site surveys, and threat assessments. They do it all at Defend Systems. As you might expect, they are getting a lot of telephone calls right now. They're returning every single one of those, and they want your call as well. If you are the decision maker at a school, at a church, or a place of business, hope is not a plan. It is time to get trained with Defend Systems. DefendSystems.com, 236-6484, 236-6484 for Defend Systems. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Look who I just finished a conversation with. It's the one and only Brian Wilson of The Drive. He is in the house today.
That's a
Maury, have
rarity.
you not seen him?
What?
He's in the big man's in the house.
Woo! Come on.
He's got
Big B.
I hesitate to tell you why because I don't want to mangle his name, but straight up 3 o'clock or just after the news, Nate
No, you're already butchering it, and I think it's 5:05.
He said right at 3. He just told me. He just said. He said right around 3 o'clock, 3:05, something like that. Tell me if I'm wrong.
5:05.
5:05? I'm very confused.
Just listen to the whole show and you won't miss
Okay,
it.
sure. No, yes.
I think that's really the point here.
6:38.
Yeah,
Pronounce his last name, McMaury.
Nate Bargatze.
Bargatze. Bargatze.
Very, very funny.
Yes. So Brian Wilson's got the big dog coming in who just sold out Bridgestone Arena.
I know, right?
Comedy genius, who's good friends with Dusty Slay, who we've had on the show.
Oh, Dusty.
Right? So Dusty, I've thrown it out to Dusty. I know Dusty's as big as, I mean, he's getting big and he's as busy as they are, but I threw it out to Dusty and said, wait a minute, Slay. I mean, what's up with that? Bargatze's on with Wilson. You can't grace us with your presence? I mean, I feel like that's appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely.
That Wilson gets the headliner and I get the opening guy. And, of course, Dusty immediately, told me that I wasn't nearly as important as Brian Wilson, and I needed to start understanding that.
Put you in your place.
Well,
wait a minute, Dusty told you that or Dan did?
No, all of them. They all tell me that. No, he actually, Dusty, I think I was trying to make a joke, and anytime you try to make a joke on text message, it's a mistake. Because I was
especially to a comedian.
Because I do say like, dude, I love you. I listen to you guys. I'm just so busy right now, and I'm like, I'm just messing with you, dude.
Was that? I don't know if you were meaning to, but that kind of sounded like him.
Yeah, I can kind of give it.
That was good.
I can kind of, he's got a little. If I worked on it,
yeah, I was about to say. I think if you could craft this.
The trailer, you just start talking about the trailer park. Trailer park. Give me a trucker hat and I could do it. Anyway, I'm excited about Nate Bargatze. Okay, it's close.
Sure, it's
At whatever time he comes on with the drive, but I'm also going to be a little on edge right now for the rest of the show, and I'll tell you why. Because Brian Wilson is a big man, and he's become a friend, but I know he likes it the way he likes it. I mean, I've seen his studio. And he walked in here and he goes, hey, I'm here. Oh, what are you here? Oh, I've got Nate coming on. He's coming in the studio. So I decided to come in and do the show from the studio today. So you need to get out of here right at 3 o'clock. He didn't say it that way, but that's the way I took it. So now I'm worried about getting my stuff ready and getting all out of here at 3 o'clock. The Bud Light issue, here's the deal. It bothers me more from a business perspective than anything. Because it seems like a completely unforced error that is a dumb move. I can't believe that you're going to gain more market share than you lose as a result of this move. All right, let's break it down. All right, forget the wokeness, forget all of that, forget that corporations crumble to woke culture for the purpose of, virtue signaling or showing how virtuous they are and how forward-thinking they are. For the love, you sell Bud Light. Come on now. This is not coming from a customer. I assure you that if Bud Light wanted... I'm sorry, I just got completely distracted because one of our super texters, Bell, just wrote, Bud Light and the loafers. That's good.
Mean and funny.
That's funny. But... you know what? If I ever order a Bud Light again, I'm going to order it that way. I'll take a Bud Light and a Light in the loafers. I've been known to order a Bud Heavy every once in a while. That's what I call it. If there's Bud Light, there must be Bud Heavy.
Yeah, I like Bud Light, but
don't. Bell, move so I can see if he's kidding. He looks serious. You do not drink Bud Light, do you?
I like Bud Light.
Do you?
Michelob Ultra.
Big fan of Dylan Mulvaney.
Do you really like Bud Light, or do you accept Bud Light?
Yeah. It's one of those.
I accept Bud Light. If there is someone that says, "Do you want a beer?" and I say, "Sure, I'll have a beer," and they go to their fridge and they walk over to with a Bud Light, I accept the Bud Light. I open the Bud Light and I drink the Bud Light.
Yes.
There's never a moment that I've thought to myself, boy, I want a beer. But I really, really, really want it to be a Bud Light. If Bud Light truly wanted to galvanize me as we say in the business, P1 customer, then they would have stopped making crappy beer about 30 years ago and up to their beer game.
You're
but
a P1 because it tastes like pee.
If I want to drink half water, half beer, I go Coors Light. That's just the way I go. Coors Light is my beer, my beach beer of choice. Now, in all seriousness, who are we appealing to when we ask Dylan Mulvaney to become some sort of product brand personality? If you don't know who Dylan Mulvaney is, congratulations. You're living a good life. Dylan Mulvaney is a social media, quote, influencer. This is an actor. He had some minor success. I don't know if it's on Broadway or commercials or whatever, but he had a low level of success as an actor. And he decided to become or wanted to transition to become a woman. He is a transgendered American. To my knowledge, he's had some surgery, but he has not had the snippy, as they say. That's it. What? Why are you laughing? That is a
scientific.
That is a medical term.
The snippy.
If you go in there and it's time for the snippy. That's what happens.
That's what they say.
Or it's either the snippy or the soey. Because some people want to have the soey. Work with me here. So
yes, sir.
So I don't think he's done that yet, but he does this podcast, which is very odd, and it's called The Days of Girlhood, where, he talks about being a transgender person, whatever. But he's getting a lot of contracts amongst various companies that want to demonstrate their wokeness. He received an invitation to the White House. To the White House. You know who hasn't gotten an invitation to the White House? Officer Collazo of the Metro Nashville Police Department. Do you know who hasn't gotten an invitation to the White House? Officer Engelbert of the Metro Nashville Police Department. I think that's his last. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. You know who has? Dylan Mulvaney. So Mulvaney comes out on April 1st and, Bud Light, and I don't know what March Madness is. Ha, 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 I root for your team, or whatever he said. And I thought it was an April Fool's Day joke. I assumed that this was some attempt at humor, and I initially thought, boy, Anheuser-Busch is going to catch it in the proverbial short hairs because the trans community is going to come after them for making fun of transgender people. And I can't believe that Dylan Mulvaney would do this. And then I realized, well, he wouldn't. So here we are. And the natural reaction amongst, you and me and the rest of normal society is like, what are you trying to do here? I don't even care what Dylan Mulvaney wants to go through in his world, in his mind, surgical procedure or no, snippy or no. That is his business. He gets to live a life of his own choosing in the United States of America. My father always said every man or woman deserves to go to hell in their own fashion.
Grandfather.
Did I say father? Oh, I meant my pa. Sorry. Every man deserves to go to hell in his own fashion. You get it? In a freedom-loving society. But that doesn't explain what in the corporate world Anheuser-Busch thought they were achieving here. So let's break it down. I'll give the transgender community the benefit of the doubt. Because several years ago, they had it at about 0.28% of the population. Let's say 0.3% of the population. 0.3% of the population identified as transgender. Nowadays, I am certain that percentage has gone up. Let's say it's 1%. Let's say we have one out of every 100 people in America identify themselves as transgender. How many of those people are drinking Bud Light? Now, were I a stereotyping guy, I'm not the one that would say this, but were I one to say this, I would suggest to you that in the transgender community, I'm thinking more mimosa or mojito or Prosecco. I'm not thinking that community gravitates to the Anheuser-Busch section of the beer aisle in the grocery store. That's just me. So you're already behind a deficit to begin with. But even if you get them all, if every transgender person of a drinking age in the United States of America decides that they're going to drink Bud Light, can you possibly get enough of them to drink Bud Light against the number of people that want to take a machine gun and say, to hell with Bud Light, just like Kid Rock? It doesn't make any business sense. But apparently Anheuser-Busch thinks that you are foolish enough to raise holy hell and then waltz right into the grocery store and buy yourself another six-pack of delicious ice-cold Bud Light or Bud Heavy or Michelob or whatever it might be. I'm curious to see how many bars on how many bars on Lower Broad decide to put money where their mouth is and say no thank you to Bud Light. Kid Rock, your move. It's your name on the marquee, pal, not Steve Smith's. Your name. I expect we'll get all those Anheuser-Busch products out post-haste. It's 2:50 on Super Talk.
The former Vice President Mike Pence says he will comply with a jury subpoena that investigates Donald Trump in regards to the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Plus, some news with Senate Majority Leader Jack Johnson. That and more 3 o'clock right here. Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Mac Maury, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
And an admission. Have you ever had a Zima?
A Zima?
Do you know what a Zima is?
Of course he has.
I don't know.
No, I don't know what that is.
A lot of folks are suggesting that Dylan Mulvaney and Zima would have been a better fit, and it's time for me to admit that I was a big fan of Zima back in the day. Big fan of Zima. Loved the Zima.
You would have been.
You shut your mouth, Belkay. Whatever. Tequila boy. Brian Wilson is up next, and he's got a cast of characters that are coming with him, including Nate Bargatze. I think I got that correct. And he is on the way from our palatial studios here on Music Row. It's The Drive with Brian Wilson coming up next on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.